This is happening right now in Jerusalem, and what I'm about to share will leave you utterly shaken. Last night, just as the city slept under a velvet sky, an extraordinary sound pierced the darkness, an echo that rolled through the ancient streets and shook the hearts of all who were awake. At exactly midnight, the shofar sounded from the Temple Mount, a blast so powerful, so precise, that it seemed to carry a message straight from heaven. Imagine the scene. Jerusalem's old stones bathed in silver moonlight, the western wall quiet except for a few late-night worshippers, and the air heavy with anticipation. Then the sound came. A resonance that was more than a horn, more than music. It was a voice, a thunderous declaration that startled dogs, roused sleepers, and made the city tremble. Eyewitnesses from every corner of Jerusalem described the same impossible experience. A devout Jew fell to his knees, overcome by awe, certain that he had heard the voice of the Almighty. A Christian pilgrim, awake in prayer, wept as the sound rolled across the city, feeling it pierce the veil between heaven and earth. Even local residents, ordinary people with no religious training, stopped in the streets asking one another, "Did you hear it? Did you hear the name?" And they all heard the same thing. A supernatural sound that carried purpose, rhythm, and unmistakable meaning. My friend, this was not a coincidence. This was not a natural occurrence. The timing, the location, the intensity, it all points to something far greater, something divine, something prophetic unfolding before our very eyes. Tonight, we're going to uncover what that sound meant, why it happened now, and how it connects to thousands of years of prophecy. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about Jerusalem, about prophecy, and about the voice of God breaking into the world. As the echoes of the Shofar rolled through Jerusalem at midnight, the city seemed to pause in awe. The witnesses describe an energy in the air, a charged presence that was almost tangible. Those who were awake spoke of a light that appeared suddenly over the Temple Mount, not like the sun or moon, but a holy radiance that seemed to hover above the golden dome, illuminating the stones below with a supernatural glow. It was as if the heavens themselves had bent low, reaching down to touch the city, signaling that something extraordinary was taking place. People across different neighborhoods, from the Jewish quarter to the Christian and Muslim quarters, all reported the same phenomena. A deep, resonant vibration accompanying the shofar, a sound that seemed to carry words, patterns, even names. Those attuned to spiritual matters understood immediately that this was more than ritual. It was divine communication. Rabbis, priests, and local religious leaders were summoned spontaneously, and as they gathered near the western wall, they too heard it. The shofar not only sounded but spoke, echoing with a rhythm that seemed to come from beyond time itself. One elderly rabbi, who had studied the Torah for decades, later recounted, "I've heard many shofars in my lifetime, but this was the voice of God manifesting. It spoke in a cadence I cannot explain, a pattern I recognize only from the prophecies of the scriptures." A Christian missionary from abroad, who had been praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, described the moment as a revelation. "I fell to my knees. The sound entered my very soul. I knew with certainty that what was happening was a sign, a message for all who would listen. Even secular witnesses reported an overwhelming sense of awe, a recognition that the night carried significance beyond their understanding." The timing of this event is staggering. Occurring at midnight in the heart of Jerusalem, it aligns with ancient prophecies of the end times and the return of divine activity in the city of the great King. The number 12, the hour, symbolic of God's authority and the tribes of Israel, cannot be ignored. 7 days before, there had been unusual celestial activity above the city, strange alignments of stars that biblical scholars immediately associated with prophetic markers. And now, the shofar's blast, echoing through the streets at midnight, created a pattern reminiscent of the trumpets in the book of Revelation, heralding a divine announcement. Local news channels remained silent, capturing only fragments of the event, but social media exploded. Videos of the light, recordings of the shofar's echo, and witness testimonies flooded platforms, leaving viewers around the world questioning reality and longing for answers. Experts in meteorology and acoustics confirmed that the phenomena could not be explained naturally. No storm, no technical device, no human intervention could have created what Jerusalem had experienced. But beyond the science, the spiritual significance is undeniable. The shofar has always symbolized awakening, judgment, and the heralding of God's presence. That it sounded in Jerusalem at this exact hour, over the very site of the Temple Mount, indicates a convergence of heaven and earth, a moment carefully orchestrated in the divine timeline. This was not a random event. This was prophecy unfolding before our eyes, calling the faithful to recognize that God is moving, that His voice is not silent, and that the long-anticipated time of awakening is here. As the shofar's echoes continued to resonate through Jerusalem, a profound stillness settled over the city. It wasn't just the sound itself, but the way it interacted with the ancient stones, the walls, and the hearts of those who listened. Witnesses describe a sensation of time slowing, as if the night itself were bending to accommodate the message being delivered from heaven. People standing near the western wall reported feeling vibrations under their feet, subtle but unmistakable, almost as if the city itself were alive and responding to the divine sound. The effect was not limited to one group or faith. Jews, Christians, and even some Muslims who were awake at that hour felt an undeniable shift in the spiritual atmosphere, a moment of unity that transcended human divisions. The timing of the event aligns with ancient prophecies, many of which speak of signs appearing in Jerusalem before a great awakening or the return of the Messiah. Biblical scholars immediately drew parallels to the trumpets sounded at Mount Sinai when God revealed His presence to Moses, as described in Exodus 19. Thunder, lightning, clouds, and the trumpet blast, all elements echoed in last night's occurrence. It was as if history were repeating itself, not as a mere event, but as a prophetic pattern unfolding in real time. Some witnesses claimed that the sound of the shofar carried not only rhythm, but meaning. Certain phrases and syllables seemed to emerge from the echo, recognizable to those who had studied the scriptures and ancient Jewish mystical traditions. This, they said, was the voice of God communicating across centuries, speaking directly to the city that He had chosen. Local religious leaders quickly convened emergency gatherings. Rabbis, priests, and pastors debated what this meant, poring over texts and aligning last night's signs with historical patterns. One rabbi stated, "I've spent my life studying the bat coal, the daughter of the voice, the way God speaks after the age of the prophets. What we heard last night fits exactly within that tradition. The voice is returning, and the Messiah's arrival is near." Christian pastors connected the moment to New Testament accounts, recalling how voices from heaven accompanied Jesus' baptism and how thunder echoed during His moments of divine revelation. For many, this was confirmation that God is not distant, that the sacred is breaking through the ordinary, and that the long-awaited time of prophecy is accelerating. Eyewitnesses shared deeply personal experiences. A young woman standing near the Temple Mount described tears streaming down her face, not from fear, but from awe. "I felt as though every prayer I had ever whispered was being answered simultaneously," she said. An elderly man in the Jewish quarter recounted that he had never experienced anything like this in his 82 years. It was as if Jerusalem itself were praying and the heavens were responding. Social media amplified these stories with short video clips of the glowing light over the Dome of the Rock, recordings of the shofar, and people's emotional reactions spreading rapidly across platforms. Scientists analyzed the data and found no natural explanation for the intensity of the sound or the sudden illumination, further deepening the sense of divine intervention. Prophetic patterns were unmistakable. The shofar sounded during the Hebrew month of Tishrei, a time of holy feasts like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which historically marks significant divine interventions in Israel's history. 7 distinct blasts were reported by multiple witnesses, each separated by precise intervals, echoing the biblical number of spiritual perfection and completion. Scholars noted that these 7 blasts mirrored the trumpets of Revelation, signaling that God's plan is reaching a critical stage. The convergence of timing, location, and supernatural sound indicates that this event is not isolated. It is a herald, a wake-up call, and a divine reminder that the city of Jerusalem remains at the center of God's unfolding plan for the world. As dawn approached, the energy in Jerusalem shifted from awe to a palpable urgency. The shofar's echoes had not faded entirely. They seemed to linger in the stones, in the air, and in the hearts of the faithful who remained awake, waiting for the next sign. People reported a sudden quiet, a sacred silence that blanketed the city as if the world itself were holding its breath. It was during this sacred stillness that many realized the significance of what had just transpired. This was not a random occurrence, not a natural phenomenon, and certainly not something that could be explained away by science alone. This was a prophetic moment, a direct intersection of heaven and earth, and Jerusalem was at its epicenter. Local religious leaders, having gathered in the immediate aftermath, described the event as a convergence of ancient promises with contemporary reality. One rabbi explained, "For centuries, our ancestors waited for the bat call, the heavenly voice, to return. Last night it came, and it came to remind us that God's timing is perfect, that His plans are unfolding exactly as foretold in the Scriptures." Christian ministers echoed similar sentiments, connecting the shofar blasts to the trumpets described in Revelation, foreshadowing the final return of the Messiah. The prophetic weight of these connections cannot be overstated, a sound that bridges both Old and New Testament traditions, a signal that the world is entering a season foretold by prophets. Eyewitnesses shared deeply transformative experiences. People who had previously struggled with doubt reported a sudden clarity of vision, as though the heavenly sound had pierced through the noise of daily life and spoken directly to their souls. A Messianic Jewish woman standing near the Western Wall described it as a moment when time itself seemed suspended. "I could feel every generation of believers standing with me in that moment," she said. "The past, present, and future all collided, and God's glory was undeniable." Meanwhile, ordinary residents reported seeing unusual lights illuminating the city, a sacred glow that seemed to radiate from the Temple Mount and the surrounding hills. Photographers and videographers captured the scene, sharing images of the glowing skyline and the reverent crowds, further confirming that this event was both seen and heard by multitudes. The prophetic implications extend far beyond Jerusalem. Scholars and spiritual leaders emphasize that when God moves in the city of the great King, the effects ripple globally. Jerusalem is the axis of divine activity, the focal point of biblical prophecy, and every supernatural occurrence there signals a shift in the spiritual climate of the world. 7 shofar blasts, precise timing during the month of Tishrei, the unusual illumination of the city, all of these elements align with scriptural patterns that precede major divine interventions. The event has caused a surge of prayer and worship across continents as people sense the urgency of the moment and seek alignment with God's plan. Social media amplified the impact exponentially. Clips of the shofar, the glowing Temple Mount, and emotional reactions from worshippers went viral, drawing attention from both believers and skeptics. Yet, even as the world observes, there is a sense that those who are spiritually awake are receiving a deeper message, an invitation to prepare, to awaken, and to participate in the fulfillment of prophecy. This event, they realize, is not a singular miracle, but a divine signal, a call for the faithful to align their hearts and lives with God's timing and purpose. In short, the sacred light and shofar blasts over Jerusalem were not merely symbolic. They were a tangible, audible, and visible announcement from heaven. They confirmed that God is active, that His plan is unfolding, and that those who are spiritually awake must pay attention. The city, ancient yet eternal, had once again become the stage where divine history meets human experience, a reminder that prophecy is not merely written, it is lived, witnessed, and heard. Now, my friend, this is the moment to pause and reflect on what all of this means for you personally. The shofar that echoed through Jerusalem at midnight, the sacred light that bathed the city, and the eyewitness testimonies from believers and skeptics alike. These are not mere coincidences. They are divine markers, signposts pointing toward a greater reality, a reality that transcends our human understanding and calls for a response. The question you must ask yourself is simple, yet profound. Are you ready? Are you prepared to align your life with what heaven is declaring in these days? Consider the words of Joel 2:28-31, which speak of wonders in the heavens and on the earth, of blood, fire, and smoke, of the sun turning to darkness, and the moon to blood. For centuries, these passages were treated as distant prophecies, events waiting for a far-off future. Yet here we are, witnessing manifestations in Jerusalem that mirror these ancient words. The signs are not only occurring, they are intensifying. The heavens are proclaiming a message, and the earth is trembling in response. This is a wake-up call, a divine invitation to recognize that the prophetic clock is ticking and that history is accelerating toward fulfillment. What you witnessed in Jerusalem is a reminder that God's voice has not gone silent. It reverberates through the shofar, through flashes of light, through the sacred atmosphere that surrounds His city. The faithful who experienced the shofar at midnight heard more than sound. They heard a call, a personal summons to prepare, to repent, and to rise spiritually. The world may dismiss it, label it coincidence, or attempt to rationalize it away, but those attuned to heaven recognize it as unmistakable truth. Every blast of the shofar, every illumination of the city, every heart trembling in response is a testimony to God's continuing presence and His active hand in human history. So what action must you take? First, cultivate awareness. Open your spiritual eyes to see beyond the physical and perceive the divine narrative unfolding around you. Second, embrace readiness. Scripture calls for vigilance, for hearts prepared to meet God's timing and respond to His voice. And third, engage with your community of faith. Share these revelations, pray earnestly, and stand in alignment with the purposes God is unveiling. The events in Jerusalem are not confined to one city. They are a message for the entire world, and your response can ripple outward, participating in the fulfillment of prophecy. Finally, understand this. The shofar, the light, the sacred atmosphere, these are more than signs, they are a declaration. Heaven is moving, God is speaking, and time is shortening. The prophetic fulfillment is no longer abstract, it is tangible, it is present, it is urgent. Do not wait to act. Let your heart be stirred, let your spirit respond, and let your life bear witness to the reality of God's power and presence. The city of Jerusalem has once again become a stage where heaven meets earth. Will you answer the call? Will you stand awake in this season? The choice is yours, and the time is now.